So spring is upon us. We had our last frost. It's time to get busy with the trees. I've got four, that's five, the four simple tips, and I'm going to show you how I can help you most get the best out of your early spring preparation to make those trees look fantastic. In particular, we're going to be looking at the work that I was doing on my Trident this time last year. You've never seen the footage, so enjoy, because there's loads of stuff to pick up on. Did you know that there are just 4 challenges to successful bonsai? But of those 4, there's one of them that will definitely destroy your bonsai. If you think you know what that is, then I challenge you to write it down in comments right now.
Passive aggression.
Passive aggression, I know.
We're going to look at these 3 Trident Maples and talk about 3 of those 4 characteristics. But let me warn you, this may not be easy listening, and a few of you may just get upset by what I have to say. But hey, it's bonsai. It's fun. Well, it should be. Hi, it's Xavier. Welcome to my bonsai retreat, and straight away, thank you to those of you who are curious enough to stay around and find out what on earth I'm talking about. Now, in front of me I've got 3 Trident Maples, and amongst those 3 we're going to be easily able to talk about 3 key elements that get in the way of successful and joyful bonsai experiences. Of these Trident Maples, no single one shares all 3 of the problematic areas. But what I will say now is all 3 definitely share a 4th factor. Or in this case, do they? More of that later.
I don't care.
When I've got challenges, I don't know about you, but normally the hand goes up and I cry out for help. Help! I need somebody. So, thinking of that word, let's see if we can define 3 of those 4 challenges I keep going on about. The first one, we'll go H, horrendous structure. Moving down that line, the second one, and in no particular order, is all about the roots. And in this case, extraordinary roots. Because of course, although they can have these incredible roots, they could be negative or they could be positive. But more of that in a moment. Third point, it's the appearance. In particular, a ludicrous appearance. And defining ludicrous, well again, that's something we'll get onto in a moment. So there you go, there's our 3 of 4 factors. And what have we got spelt out so far? H-E-L... Well, there's only the P missing. Has anyone found that? There's a joke about that, but we won't go there. Now, I'm sure we've all had trees, and when you look at those 3 factors, any one of them we've all encountered. And there are solutions to them, which I will talk about. Occasionally, we get a tree that has 2 of those factors, and if you're in my garden, you'll often have trees that have got all 3 of those factors. So before I talk about the 4th challenge, let's go into a little bit more detail about those first 3, shall we? Okay, let's see if we can nail this. The first of the elements we're going to look at is the structure. H for horrendous structure. As I said, we've all got trees that probably fit into that category, and I've got loads of them just like that. So, here's a Trident Maple. It's an import, it's a cheap import, which means it's been mass produced. Now, ignoring the pot, we first of all, and when I'm talking about structure, I am talking about our main trunk line. So we go up, we've got a little bit of movement here. Again, ignoring the surface, which is going to come under appearance, but let's go for where our first branches start. We've got branches coming off here, then we've got one underneath here, and then we've got this great big trunk continuing on upwards. So what's happened initially that's a problem is we've got an extra branch. So there's a resolution issue there. Impossible? No, we can resolve it. But if we continue to follow this up, we then start seeing we've got this this bend, and then we've got a split of the trunks again here, almost coming inside the bend, going under. And if we follow that around, we've also got this incredible bend heading away from the viewer if we're looking from this way. So there is difficulty with the trunk itself, the trunk line. If you look at these angles here, these branches are now coming from underneath the bend, underneath the bend and at the junction. Got a very, very bad wound here. A long area here with nothing on it. Now that's just one example of a tree that I say has got some pretty clear structural flaws, and the reason why they're horrendous is because the tree's been allowed to grow so long. So resolution of things like this should have taken place years ago. A decision made on where the main trunk line was going to be and what to do with its other branches. So that's why I say commonly we get these on imported trees or trees that you pick up from big bonsai places or stuff where really it's all mass produced, so no one's given any thought early on to how the tree is going to develop. Let's have a look at another one. Again, an import tree, and the reason why I'm using the Trident Maple is because these are expensive. You couldn't get anything like this for less than 130, 140 pounds. So to get a Trident Maple, you're going to be buying it with big flaws. We need to be thinking about this and thinking about solutions. So let's have a look at another Trident that's got some horrendous structure. Okay, now this one, I'm using this as an example because this isn't as a result of the import issues, although again, let's ignore what's going on down there and just concentrate on the main trunk line. This has got horrendous structure, more as a result of some serious damage that happened 3 years ago with a frost. This had a big top on it, and then the tree made sense. Whereas now, if you look at this, and I'll give it a spin just from this, we've got a major issue in here that's happened as a result of all the die-off that happened. Coming in closer, we've got, as I say, this was part and parcel of the original apical structure. There was a whole big part up here. We've now got, as a result of mismanagement by myself, we've got this great big right-hand bend, and then here where I've got this big, goodness knows why I've got it growing like this, sacrificial, it's another right-handed bend going up. So it's got a horrendous structure because I am continuing to make it worse. So that's what I call horrendous structure, and there's loads of trees out here that we can make the example, but in this key way I'm going to say ones that we've inherited that have already got structural faults and design flaws grown into them, and the second one that is as a result of external factors have caused unexpected horrendous structural faults. And again, a common character with that relates to the fourth point, which we haven't yet defined, starting with the letter P. Anyway, shall we move on to that second element? Yep, that second element that we talked about was the E, which is extraordinary roots. Now, I was going to say gulping or horrible roots or whatever, but the reality is that we all have different opinions. We've got this horrible rooty stuff here, and I'm saying it like I don't like it. I actually am one of those people who likes these interesting roots, but it's something that, again, if you're looking to display a tree or follow certain rules, you're going to have to resolve these sort of issues. So again, extraordinary roots can either cause you an issue or can be a benefit. Now, in this issue, I actually like the way that comes in. So my idea is to emphasize the fact that the roots are weird and bring it higher up. And of course, this is the other tree that I'll use to amply illustrate extraordinary roots. There's at least half of you out there going, these horrible... In fact, that's someone ringing me now. Hello? No, I think they're great. I don't know what you're talking about. As I was saying, before I was really interrupted by that kind subscriber who wanted to talk to me about the roots, he hates them. He says that they need to be all removed and that it's distracting to the tree. And it's enough of a problem, and I saw that it's not something that someone can walk past. So I think I'll raise that now. I'm bringing these points up because they're key issues that actually cause people to stop and look for one of two reasons. Either, wow, isn't that great? Or, whoa, isn't that horrible? And move on. And we want to try and, I suppose we want to try and know where we are in that point. Anyway, so again, this horrendous root structure, for me, it's a brilliant root structure. I love the sort of swampy, mangrovey roots. So for me, I've made the conscious decision, I like this. The structure of the tree, I like all the way up to here. And then we have a major structural flaw that I still have to solve. Now, probably a better example of extraordinary bad roots is this one here. Again, we've got a lovely big thick trunk on this Trident. Lots we can do with it, but that is terrible, and we need to resolve that. This has got, someone else has sent me a message agreeing it's terrible. We've got, if you look at it, we've got 1, 2, 3 roots down the base there, with absolutely nothing behind it, which is why I've got my favourite rock there. We've also got this great big root here exposed coming out, crossing over what was potentially going to be the front of the tree. Something has to be done. It can't stay like that. Even for me, that isn't what I would call an acceptable root structure. And again, I'm going to stress, and I'm going to apologise, this is what I call an emotive subject, because too often we all fall into the category of rules, and immediately there'll be people who say, well, I don't follow the rules. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on, but this can be a touchy and difficult subject. And all I say to you is, if you've got your teeth on edge and you're ready to throw your breakfast cereal at the screen, hold off, please. This is all going to round in nicely at the end to point 4. Should we just quickly look at point 3 before I tell you how I'm going to solve those 3 problems? The third element, all about appearance, and that's the surface issues, and I've called it ludicrous because, you know, all trees represent how they've developed in nature in your garden, and often they're going to be rough, they're going to be all sorts of sort of blemishes on them. But some of these blemishes, I love doing that, blemishes, are in the ludicrous category. And when I say ludicrous, I mean you've really gone to town on losing a branch, or naturally a branch has pulled away, and this is where we're looking at here on this one, and you have got the biggest unhideable, unmanageable scar imagined. It looks ludicrous, and what does it do? Someone walks past the tree, they do one of 2 things. They look at it and go, oh, and walk on by. Or they look at it and go, why hasn't that person done something about that? And occasionally people just look at it and go, it's Trident Maple, love Trident Maples. Again, £125 minimum, and yet it's got a glaring fault that perhaps is going to get in the way of a lot of people's enjoyment of this as a tree. We've seen this one. We've basically got a tree here that's got this great big bulbous area that fits in with the horrendous structure, but the appearance of it, because of the way it's been, that's just basically been nibbled and chopped away with no sense of planning, and so we've just got this great big mess. And then we've also got an issue here, and this is what often plays into the appearance, is here is a very, very clear wire scar, and that's healed over, but we've got this very, very clear lines and delineation, which at the best will turn around to people and go, that's not happened naturally. Someone might argue that has, and so you could make your design around it, but that is certainly not a natural occurrence. And if it is, someone please show me a picture. Now, go on, I know, you're all saying, Xav, you're stating the obvious, I'm really not sure what this is all about. Well, we all want trees that actually look like this. This is a Trident Maple, all from the same batch of the ones you've seen. This one had a few issues that I sorted and put in the ground, but it's got a lovely trunk, so it's got a nice structure. There's no root issues, and clearly there's no what I'd call ludicrous appearance. All this needs is a good prune, which we're going to do. So this is what we want. I've talked about, you know, the structure, the roots, and the appearance, i.e. lines and stuff like that on the actual main trunk. But to try and take our trees to this point, or something like this, which we consider acceptable and won't raise people's eyebrows unduly, we need to look at that 4th element. So should we do that? Well, for those who haven't guessed what the P is, problematic owner or practitioner. In other words, me, or indeed you.
Are you talking about me?
And I'm clearly using the word problematic. We're not talking about the professional owner, the one who sees these problems and is able to work with them, and really for the amateurs or the hobbyists, they never ever seem to be an issue. We look at their trees and we think, wow. So why have I actually used the term problematic? Well, really, because I needed a P and problematic sat in with that. But no, seriously, because if we're going to do anything about any of those 3 issues that I've been raising, it's down to me, the practitioner, or you, the owner. We're either able or we're unable. If we're able, then we've either created that by knowledge we've already have, experience, or we're able to find the knowledge we want. We're motivated, so we can progress these things. And I would put myself into the category of able. You don't need to be knowledgeable, but you need to be motivated or to be able to have the resources or desire to rectify. So I'm quite happy I fit into the able category, and I will be showing you how I will progress all three of those faults on one of the trees.
The trigger warning.
Now, the other category fits in the unable, and this is where I may well put a few noses out of joint or be just a little bit too broad about it. But you know what? Unable fits in the category of people who've bought the tree. For them, they see it as beautiful, they're happy with what they've got, and though all the people around them, or many people around them, saying, well, you need to do something about it, they actually like it. So I'm going to call them positively unable. In fact, they're happy. They don't even consider they have a problem, so they probably don't even fit in the category. And you know what? That's all right. Your tree, you're happy, and ultimately your view of it is what counts. If we now move ourselves to the unable group that are always aspiring to have trees that look brilliant but aren't, then this is where we fit into perhaps the category of unable because they don't have the facilities, just can't deal with what's there. They know there's a problem, they could probably find a solution, but for whatever external reason they're not able to. It's easy for me to say, well, go find someone who can help or try and do something to mitigate it, but you know, I accept that sometimes things are outside our hands, and all we can do then is do lots of looking on YouTube and try and mitigate the issues as best you can, or indeed buy a tree that doesn't have the problems. But we do come to a final group, and you know, I'm guilty of it. I'm going to use the word I'm unable through laziness, lack of motivation, lack of time. It's very hard to not use the word lazy and have everyone go, turn off, I don't like this. But you know what? I have years where I'm busy with other things and I'm lazy, and my trees suffer as a result of it. In fact, if you look back over comments over a lot of my videos, I actually get criticised that I've got far too many trees, and as a result of it, trees become unruly, roots become unmanageable, and I create a raft of problems. And all I'll say to that is, because I fit into the category of person that I call able, it means that I know I'm going to try and fix it at some point. I can't do anything about the time, the amount of trees I have. I don't want to sell them, I don't want to reduce them. So, you know, that's where I'm aware of the issues I'm causing, but I have the motivation to do something about it. If you're one of those who has no motivation to do anything about it, or no desire to see a way to solve your problem, then you've probably turned off by now.
You're not the only one.
But I thought I'd throw that in there because, do you know what? It applies to a few of us. And sometimes we need to look in the mirror and go, I've got these expensive trees, or I've got these bonsai. I actually have a duty of care. I really ought to learn more. But let's go back now and have a look at how I would solve those problems. So, hopefully there's some of you still here. Going back to structure, element 1. Here, 1, 2, 3. Something has to be done about that. And I've used my the fact that I'm able. I've gone online. I've looked at various people who do bonsai as professional practitioners. So I've looked at it and thought, yes, I've got to remove a branch. Now, one of my options I could have done, could still do, and there'll be people saying, why don't you air layer? I could actually put an air layer here, because one of my answers could be I want to remove this and grow the tree from these ones. So that could be one of my options, and do that. So again, it's what you could either trunk chop it, or if you're patient, you can put an air layer in right there and then end up creating a second tree up here. And that's actually something I have done on one of those tridents. And here's the example. I actually took the top quarter of the apical region off, did a little air layer, and I now have this little small tree, and I've been able to rebuild the rest of the lower tree. I'd love to show you, but someone actually bought it. They were so impressed with it. But yeah, so air layer would be the option, but in this case, that's not the option I'm going to take. Now actually going back to this tree, one of the other options you can take with poor structure is you can actually disguise or hide the fact that it's there. And the best way of doing that normally is for this example here, where you've got this right angle here and this ugliness here. To overcome that, what you actually do is say grow to there, cut there, and then you grow new branches and wire them so that they create an apical canopy which actually disguises or hides the actual damage you've got. So for example with this tree, you might actually find the angle that doesn't have all this horrible scarring and say, well, the front's there. Well, we've still got some branch divots, but it's certainly better than that size. So we can disguise or hide our structural flaw. Now, there is another option to resolving issues of these branches. You can actually look to changing potting angles, and that will play more into some of the solutions when we look at horrendous roots. But I could actually say I want to bring it a lot more upright, and then I might ask myself, does the branch problem still exist? And in my case, I've still got 3 coming from some point. I've either got to remove the middle one or remove one of the side ones for my satisfaction. Now what I will say, with a lot of these, you're often dealing with 2 issues, and there's a root issue as well in terms of directionality. I'm going to come on to that, but I have already thought about the roots when I'm applying this solution. Changing the potting angle slightly, bringing this centrally up. I actually like this branch as it stands. I'm going to remove this one. Here we go. And there it is. Do I waste this? No. We'll come back to this in a minute. So now, rather than your eye being drawn to this branch down here, your actually eyes concentrating on this one and then following the line up here. Already, that's 100% better. And it may be that you only need to do one thing like this, and sometimes you say to yourself, I'm going to do one major fault a year. In the structure, there is one further thing that I can deal with, and that's up in the apex. Very heavy, leaning towards us. You can see we've got this coming here. I have to make quite a big decision. But as we're making decisions again, let's make it now. So by removing this, we've now opened up the tree, and we can see exactly the sort of line I am trying to follow with this. Not all of you will like it. I personally think that was the best solution if I wasn't going to take the central core off with an air layer. Very, very happy. And is it better than what it was? Yeah, I think it's 100% better. And of course, I don't let anything go to waste. So that branch that's been removed, I've cut it down a little bit, put it in some potting compost, which is fine-grained, which is a fine bonsai mix with some sphagnum moss and also some vermiculite. I'll put that over it to keep the moisture in, and I'm going to keep it in a corner of the garden. And hey, maybe we'll revisit that at Bonsai for Breakfast one day later in the year. So we really need to get on to point 2. So I actually like swamp style roots. So my solution for these problematic roots is to make them a feature. I can emphasize them, and that's one of the first solutions, is you actually maximize or you emphasize what could be seen as a negative feature. But you've got to be smart about it, and you've got to be looking at it and going, can that work? And for me, yes, I think it can work. Now there is a second solution, and this is a solution many people have already suggested for this. Either air layer totally, or if we want the rest of the tree, we do what is known as a ground layer. So we would remove all the problematic roots. We'd cut from there to there, and we'd cover it in sphagnum moss or bury it in the soil, and then we'd basically do a air layer in the ground with the existing tree, and we let all those new growths and we let all those new roots grow, and then we would separate that bottom section off, and we would in effect have a new tree with a brand new root structure. Now the third way, and the way I'm going to demonstrate on one of these trees, is to actually look at the roots and remove the bit that's the problem. And that's something that, again, when you do your repot, you're actually looking to establish what is the roots like. And the sooner you can get into the roots with a growing, developing bonsai, the sooner you can rectify or mitigate any issues there may be, which is why we always say build the roots first, then get your central core structure, your primary, then your secondary, and work outwards from there. To make a decision straight away and literally just remove the offending root. And I'm very, very confident, even there. Now your eye is not drawn to the thing that was crossing, but is drawn to the roots that are there, that are spreading around. From an appearance point of view, when I walk past this tree, my eye is not drawn to that extraordinary root. So I'll seal that up and then move on, I think. The other thing you can do is bury it. Many people I know aren't happy or willing to actually do a ground layer or anything like that. So all they'll do is they'll put the tree deeper into the pot, and they're not looking for that big Nabari style. They're looking for people to see the tree, the structure of the trunk, and the secondary structure you've got growing from it. Less worried about the roots. And again, another way of disguising the fact that you've got poor roots is just to bury the tree. Ultimately, it's got to be something that you're happy with and you're happy to have a look at, and something that you're happy to look at in your garden. And I'm happy with that. Now all I need to do is sort out the rest of the tree. Now looking at that third element, appearance, ludicrous appearance, is probably one of the harder ones to rectify, and almost falls in the category of impossible. Because certainly if you've got a smooth bark variety or a soft bark variety like the maples, wire scars, really rough and bad trunk chops or diebacks will invariably lead to a very, very long-term and obvious scar. So with those cases like that, you've either got to change the angle that people see as the front if you can. If you can't do that, grow branches or stuff around the offensive area to disguise or hide it. Or, as I try to do, is slowly nibble away and see if you can get it to callus over so that the scarring at least looks a little bit more natural in the way it's healed. The appearance is probably the one you need to take the most attention for, which is why we say always look out for your wire, always be careful of the soft bark varieties. When you do your trunk chops or when you do anything like that, trunk chop back by degrees. And I know Yellow of Growing Bonsai did an excellent video about that. Now, the other thing I'll talk about with appearance is actually just, you know, when you've got your shoots growing out, make sure you're doing your pruning. You're pruning back to however you want, or whatever particular style you want for your tree, whether it be back to profile. So you're just literally taking it back to the generalized shape that you want for your tree. Nice rounded. Or whether you're looking to take it back to develop to buds, and that's what I'll do with this. But I think the real point I was making is that the linchpin in all of this bonsai hobbyist stuff is the P, the owner. Whether I say problematic or knowledgeable, ultimately you or me as the owner are going to be the ones that will decide whether this tree looks good, great, excellent, or indeed survives. And for us to be able to affect that, we have to decide whether we're going to be able and motivated, or unable but motivated to do something about it. Please, it doesn't matter if you don't know how to do it, just be motivated and have a desire to want to learn and move forwards with your tree. If you're happy as it is and it doesn't matter to you about this stuff, then great, be happy. But if deep down there's something gnawing away in your stomach or whatever, and you know that there's something that should be resolved, then I challenge you, go out there and find out how to deal with it. So, despite the fact that right now you're not seeing leaves on your trees, now is the optimum time to apply all of those help principles. And indeed, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing now. With this Trident, well, it's a year further on. And in fact, if you want to get an update on last year's thread graft, and indeed the thread graft that I'm going to be doing with this Trident to improve its appearance, well, you better keep watching. Remember, hit the like button, the subscribe button, all that sort of rubbish, and you'll enjoy more content from me in 2025. Oh, and by the way, happy birthday to me. I'm 3 years old on YouTube. That's down to you. Thank you ever so much. But apart from that, There's the thread graph video you definitely want to see so you can understand what I'm doing next. All the best, happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.